Texas Governor Greg Abbott has laid out his plan to reopen the state. Phase 1 goes in effect this Friday. Governor Abbott joining us live from the state capitol. Good afternoon, Governor. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a lot to cover.
Good. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you announced all stores, malls, restaurants, and movie theaters will open Friday. What's not opening and why?
Well, the primary things that are not opening that people really wanted to have opened up would be barber shops and hair salons and gyms and bars. And the reason why is that all of these decisions that we announced were based upon two things. One is all the data that we had access to, but also was the advice of doctors. Everybody needs to understand that we have the best medical team providing us advice. It includes a former head of the United States FDA, former head of U.S. Medicaid and Medicare, an infectious disease specialist in charge of tracking and tracing COVID-19. So we get input from these tremendous doctors about ways that we can safely begin to reopen. And the conclusion was very simply that the transmission rate of COVID-19 in places like bars and hair salons is too challenging at this particular time. But know this for all of your viewers, and that is, this isn't like a one-time decision that lasts a long time. After my announcement yesterday, we went back to work immediately and we began reaching out to and contacting hair salons about the best and safest strategies, and we hope to be able to make an announcement about that sometime soon. We'll continue to work with bars, with gyms, about safe ways that we can sanitize them and reduce the transmission of COVID-19. In a bar in particular, listen, there are so many people so close to each other. Bars are gathering places where people like to socialize, and it's that close contact that can increase the spread of COVID-19, and we just need to find safe ways that we can go about the process of reducing that spread and reducing that contact.
All right. Well, what do you say to people, because there are some out there who say it's too soon to reopen?
Right, and I know there are people who are concerned about maybe we are reopening too soon, and I would let them know this. We have based the decisions on doctors and doctors' advice and medical analysis of people who do this for a living to determine the ability to control the spread of an infectious disease. And know this, and that is, as opposed to just opening everything up all at once, we have done it in phases. So we slowly open, let's say, retail stores or restaurants and things like that. So we're not having big crowds in those stores. That said, I want to emphasize, just because we're opening up doesn't mean that you have to go out if you are afraid. Stay at home if you're concerned about being exposed to COVID-19. And let me emphasize this most importantly. The math shows that 75% of the people who have lost their lives because of COVID-19 are age 65 and older. We strongly encourage people who fall into that category to continue to remain home if at all possible. That will help us be able to reduce deaths as much as possible while going about the process of re-engaging our economy.
All right. Well, just to be clear, is everyone still required to wear face coverings and practice social distancing?
So on pretty much every page of a very long document that I put out yesterday about best practices, we strongly encourage people to wear face masks and strongly encourage people on safe distancing strategies. That said, there can be no government penalty or fine or arrest or anything like that for people failing to wear a face mask. It just doesn't make sense to be letting some people out of jail because of COVID-19 while arresting others or fining others for not wearing a face mask. So there has to be a level of common sense from government. But because we are strongly encouraging people to continue to wear face masks, because doctors are encouraging that, because I know your local officials are encouraging that, we continue to insist that people should wear face masks where at all possible.
All right. So if some of the local governments wanted to continue some of these practices, they could?
When you say continue practices of urging people to wear face masks,
yes,
that would...
And continue social distancing, yes.
But, oh, no, absolutely. Listen, we as a state are encouraging those very safe practices. However, the only thing that I did about that yesterday was to say that the government cannot impose a penalty for failing to wear a face mask.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, you know, one of the big questions is schools across the state closed for the remainder of the year, but there are educators, students, and parents all wondering, will students be back in school this fall? Have you set up any sort of special council or task force to decide when and if students will go back? And at what point will you make that determination?
So we're working very aggressively to try to make sure that schools will be able to open up next fall. This is being led by TEA Commissioner Mike Morath and is putting together a team working on the best strategies that can be used to make sure that schools will be able to open up. This is so important for the education of our kids, so important for families with those kids. And so one of our top priorities is to make sure that we do have strategies in place that will allow schools to open up. It simply cannot be predicted at this time because I cannot tell you at this time what the status of the spread of the coronavirus will be come late August of this later on this year.
Okay, so what would it take to get kids back in school?
Well, there's so many factors. I'll give you some of the factors. One will be what is the spread of the coronavirus at that time? What is the status of these therapeutic drugs that either children or teachers or faculty or others could be taking that would be able to quickly treat COVID-19? Are they going to be available at that particular time? What are the sanitation practices that can be used? Another thing that I know Commissioner Morath is working on is something that I announced yesterday statewide, but he wants to implement strategically at schools, and that is tracing and tracking to box in the spread of COVID-19 through independent school districts. And so as we roll out these strategies, there are so many possibilities of ways that we hope to be able to open our schools this coming fall.
All right, and we are seeing long lines at food pantries. The demand for food still very high, and some pantries in our area running low on food and having to close early, turn some people away. What help are you offering them?
Several things. First of all, this is a top concern of ours. Obviously, we want to make sure that there's food safety for everybody across the state, and we're facing these same challenges in regions across the state. And so the things that we're doing is we've discharged, or rather deployed, more than 1,000 National Guard to assist with this process. And then in addition to that, we are working with supply chains to make sure that the food supplies will be available for all the regions across the state.
All right, Governor, thank you so much for joining us this noon hour. We know you are very busy, you and your staff working hard to keep all of us safe. Thank you for your time.
We'll keep doing it. Thank you.